1, 2.
And if you're ready to use it, I'll turn it on from here.
Come on out. Come on out. He's taking pictures and we're supposed to be looking. Look casual. Forrester. This is Sinead Bunting. I'm delighted to invite you to our third breakfast. Now, some of you here are, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, are our old timers, all right? This is our third time here, and it's fantastic. You'll notice the tables are gone because to just fit people in, it's got harder and harder, and there's a waiting list, so you are part of the elite few that made it through. Thank you for coming. If you're new to the Charter, welcome. This is a great chance for you to really meet people who are doing this and ahead of the game. If you've not joined us yet, resistance is futile, all right? So just get ready and be ready to join by the end of this. It's a wonderful time to have you here. Today, though, what it's going to be is fast-paced. We're going to have 3 panels. I'm going to get through quickly, but in doing so, we have a goal. I hate taking time and not having something to show for it. And I'm also an ex-head teacher, all right? So you remember that. You're going to have homework, okay? In your chairs is a piece of paper, a pledge. Our goal today is to send every single one of you out with at least one practical thing that you can do in the office and start when you get back there this afternoon. So please be thinking throughout. Listen to our panelists, each of whom is going to try and give you some ideas what you can do. But really, the time for just talking about stuff is gone. The time to act on it, to focus on the practical and move the dial is now. We've got lots of things to share with you, lots of good news. And the good thing is, we're ahead of the game. I'm giving you a little bit of a spoiler alert. We have our data report, and we always look at that first, and the first stat is, oh, how many women, how many women, how many women? And the good news is, we're still ahead of the game. At 24% women, it ain't 50%, so we're not there yet. But we are on the way, and we're ahead of the game nationally. So you can already feel pleased, but there's lots to do. Sinead.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, there we go. Great. So to echo what Debbie said, thank you so much for being here today. It's amazing, our third annual event. Thanks for helping us join those dots. We, like last year, have created a wee video to do a recap of last year and all the kind of stuff that we've accomplished working with you guys. Some of the highlights for me are the growth of our signatories. So we're extending, that network. Our open playbook, our mapping of all those kind of diversity initiatives and inclusion initiatives. The introduction of 3 new directors, Edlyn, Lee, and Rebecca, who have injected some passion, energy, and expertise, which has been fantastic. Also a highlight was Debbie being recognized as Computer Weekly's most influential woman in IT last year. Woo! I think that's testament to Debbie's drive, to Debbie's passion and her tenacity, and kind of, bringing things forward. Yeah, I'd like to embarrass her, make her a bit red. So that was really fantastic, and we're very proud of that. And kind of the last thing at the end of the year, which was very cool, was we had 300 women, I think it's actually 350 women, apply to be part of our marketing campaign. They sent in a selfie and a story as to their journey in tech, and it was humbling for us to actually read it. We selected 8 ladies to appear in a professional photo shoot by Rankin, the world famous photographer, who has photographed the Queen, David Bowie, and Madonna. No, I don't know about Madonna, but Kate Moss. So yesterday we had that photo shoot with Rankin in attendance, and we got to meet those women, and they were truly humbling and inspiring. And the whole goal is to have those women showcase why women should get into tech. So it's been fantastic. But enough about me withering on. Thank you for being here. I'm going to play this video, and it has this amazing new soundtrack song. You're going to leave here with it in your ear. It's we've been listening to it for the last few days. It's fantastic. So without further ado, here's the video. Thank you.
Stop when the clock hits 13. You've been working, but you're flirting with the weekend. You can freak out. 1 in a million. You're a gem shine when the light grows dim. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. We got the right stuff. We put the hammer right down. Wanna be like us? You better stick around. If you want it, you gotta prove it. Like we do it, like we do it. Groove with your hips and break it down. Stop when the clock hits 13. You've been learning and you're earning all of those hours. You can freak out. 1 in a million. Gonna shine bright and you never go dim. Sing it 1, 2, 3, 4. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. We got the right stuff. We put the hammer right down. Wanna be like us? You better stick around. If you want it, you gotta prove it. Like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
You're going to be humming that all week, all right? Now, can I ask my first panel to come up, and let's start looking at what we have done as our members.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, welcome.
We're on the end, Hema.
Okay, to kick off our discussion while you're sitting, I've already set them an assignment, and this is the toughest question they're going to have on the panel. Each member has 1 minute or less to introduce themselves, their role, why they and their company are here. All right? Who wants to take the challenge first? Hema.
Good morning, everyone. Right, are you doing the minute?
It's going, I'm
Okay,
right
great.
now.
So I'm Hema Marshall. I run the small business operation. I'm the director for small business at Cisco, and I'm also the inclusion and diversity lead. But actually I have a passion around inclusion, and it isn't just about inclusion on its own, it's around diversity as well, and how you bring those two things together. So I'm really passionate about diversity in all its form, and we've been a signature since you launched.
Yes, we all are old timers up here in the nicest way. Good, and you did it within 1 minute. Are you ready to take the
The
challenge?
bar's very high.
Let's
Very
go.
high. Yep.
Go.
My name's Kirsty Kirk. I am Chief Product Owner for our Tech Talent Squad within Nationwide. A bit like Hema, I think I have a huge passion around inclusion and diversity as an individual, but I also have a massive privilege of working for Nationwide, which inclusion and diversity is in the heritage and roots of the building society sector. And so mutuality, in terms of our culture, actually lives and breathes. So it's a really important element in our history, and with our tech strategy, a really key focus for us moving forward.
Super. So the women have managed to keep to a minute. Let's see how we can do. Ross.
My name's Ross Woodham. I'm the General Counsel and Chief Privacy Officer excuse me, at Apton Technologies. We recently had a name change, but the CEO of our company, Susan Bowen, was one of the original signatories to the Tech Talent Charter. She's now living in Toronto. She's the head of our company. And for us, this has really been a real passion for the business. Susan Bowen obviously has driven that for the few years that she's been with the company. But for us, really, it's been a real change in our culture. We've really focused on this in terms of identifying talent. And for us, it's really a solution to a problem that we've had for a few years, which is accessing the right talent and looking at diversity and really challenging the pools of talent that we're able to access has really started to open up new talent pools to us and enable better recruitment for us and better results for our business.
Okay, and last but not least, George.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm George Brasher. I'm the Managing Director for HP for the UK and Ireland. As a company, this is really important. We're very proud that we have the most diverse board of any US-based multinational in tech. It's something that's very important for us as a company. But for me personally, and I said this, we were a founding signatory of the Tech Talent Charter, and I asked, why do we do it? And I said, it's about winning. And what I mean by that is the only way this industry will thrive is if we attract the best and brightest. And frankly, I'm pleased that we've gone from the industry going from 17% women to 24%. We have a long way to go.
Absolutely.
But if we bring the best and brightest in, that's how the industry will thrive.
Okay, and that, well, you might bring that reverb down because it was an exciting thing to finish with, but okay. So, listen, you've all been on this journey for a while. Some people are relatively new and trying to think about what they can do next, or really looking at the big thing. In the last year, you've seen our video, you don't have to do a song and dance for it. What's been the big changes, the big moves forward that you've experienced? And you can be honest about where it's been tough or messy, but what has been a game changer for your company in the last year? Who would like to jump in?
I'll start. I think one of the things that we've come to realize is almost taking a broad brush approach and thinking that one thing is going to solve everything has been a real realization for us. So having a recognition that within our tech strategy, the need to develop and bring in many hundreds of technologists has been a real opportunity for us to shift our approach. So one of the things we've talked about a number of years ago was unconscious bias training. And actually, we took an approach that said everyone in the organization will go through unconscious bias training and hoped it would have significant impact. And it probably didn't have the impact that we'd hoped it would. So it has its place and it has some benefit, but it's not going to solve what really is a systemic issue. And so for us, I think we've really got forensic and looked at many different areas of the colleague life cycle, but also our approach has shifted to much more small experimentation.
Good.
As opposed to one kind of massive scale opportunity. And what I mean by that is looking at taking, so just one example would be gender decoder. So we've looked, we need to recruit a large number of individuals. So we've used that to look at job descriptions, we've used that to look at our ads, and started that at a relatively small population, tested, learned, and then when it has had the impact through data, we've then rolled that out more broadly. So test and learn and experimentation for us across all parts of the colleague life cycle will clearly be a focus for us as we move forward.
And that's really resonating, and George, I'm going to bring you in. I love watching you. This is where we get the enthusiasm leaning in. But I think to echo, and we'll hear this when we talk about findings from the report, that focus on culture is huge.
Yeah.
I'm pleased that we're going to be talking about, this is no longer just about diversity, this is inclusion and diversity.
Yeah.
One magic bullet isn't enough. You know, we can't suddenly get everyone and fix them in one go. And that getting forensic and small, because our stats are suggesting that our micro companies are screaming ahead in this respect. They are leading the way. That doesn't mean big organizations can't do that. George, do you want to build on any of what we've heard?
Sure. So, and I was struck when I read when I took an early look at the report last night on how well small companies are doing and how poorly large companies are. And I don't think it's surprising, especially a lot of global companies. They'll have global processes and global policies that don't always work well with local initiatives. One of the things we've done at HP is think about how can we partner with local companies to be able to extend our reach. I'll give you one example. One of our partners is CCS Media. They're a privately owned, Midlands-based company that works with companies of all sizes in the UK. They have a lot more flexibility than HP. I think everyone's aware of the apprenticeship levy, and it's on companies that are larger than 250 employees. As we paid into the apprenticeship levy, we had trouble with HP's processes to be able to take advantage of that. But we partnered with CCS Media. They were able to take that money and create a whole set of apprentices. And one of the things we agreed is that they would be 50% female. And so we wanted to have a mix of 50-50 because we thought that would, again, help drive the right outcome from a very balanced workforce. But the other thing they've also done is with a focus on BAME, graduates and apprenticeships. So for us, this is a way for a large company to partner with a smaller company and really get a great outcome for the graduates and the apprentices out there in the industry.
So it's companies, big companies, finding ways to think about small.
Yep.
And it's even, if I would say, to our medium-sized companies, it's again, how can we find those enthusiastic, those innovative groups, empower them and scale out? I'm pleased that you're talking about we're broadening this discussion on diversity.
Yep.
You know, it's no longer just enough to say women, because we've said all along, if all we did is just bring on more white middle-class women, that's not more diversity. That's not the answer. We have to. And it's digging into that idea again of inclusive practices. Hema, where would you build on this? What's happening at Cisco?
Okay, so I think, look, inclusion and diversity is like a micro company. And if you think about an organization, it needs sales and marketing and processes and operations. And inclusion diversity as a program needs all of those elements. So about 3 years ago, we had a board and we had, EROs in each of those, and we kind of started to separate them. We've actually brought them all back together. So all of our employee resource organizations, just to explain what an ERO is, all have come together. So whether it's LGBT or BAME or gender well-being, mental health,
absolutely,
all of these things actually build the inclusion of your own organization, right? We've always said inclusion, diversity is like, scales apart. However, when you think about inclusion, Cisco's done some really incredible things. So the first thing is we have 6 core principles that everybody in the organization adhere to. Things around taking accountability, leaving your ego at the door, taking difference to heart. That taking difference to heart about diversity in terms of people are different, thinking, the fact that people think differently, the fact that people have different perspectives. So actually bringing that all together, my inclusion diversity board has now expanded from 6 people to around 36 people. Fantastic. And whilst that sounds like a bit of a mammoth way of trying to move it, it does move it, because suddenly you've got a connection with different employee resource groups, and they're actually working together to figure out how do we move the needle.
Because it has to be that connecting the dots, isn't it? You can't outsource diversity and inclusion. That doesn't work. It has to be everyone's responsibility. And I like bringing the different groups there because, again, it's not just supporting those groups of people. It's building in allies. It's building in champions. It's making sure everyone feels they have a role. You know, we tried from the very start of the charter. This was not just women fixing it for women. This was everyone coming together to fix it for all of us. Ross, how about you? What's going on from Aptam's perspective?
So I think from Aptam's perspective, we are fairly unique in that not only are we quite a small company, we're 600 employees worldwide, and so from a culture perspective and being able to make the shifts and things, we maybe have a bit more flexibility, but we're also essentially a new company. We have a fairly long history, but we've just been acquired in the last year. Leadership's changed, structure has changed, and so we are establishing a new company going forward. And so we have this opportunity to create a culture.
Lovely.
And for us, one of the things that I've seen over the last year in particular is, as a small company, many of our processes and things rely on individual people. And so anything that takes that person out of the business, so either an inhibitor to actually turning up to work, so it might be simply family commitments, something like that, but it could equally be things like lost days to workplace stress, that type of thing. Those are things that really slow our business down. And so what we've really been looking at is what are the inhibitors to getting people into work and that inclusivity. And one of the things that's been a real game changer for us over the last year is we've really embraced flexible working.
Yes.
And by embracing flexible working, it's being able to, we're able to better retain talent, we're able to get people working more often, and we lose less days. And the statistics around this are incredible. The UK economy loses something like £30 billion to lost working days due to mental health. And so anything that we can do to start to chip away at that and address that problem has really helped our business and driven us forward. And pace is so important to our business, so we need people to be in and engaged.
And I'd echo that and throw that down as a huge opportunity for everyone. We know from one of our partners at TimeWise Foundation that does research into flexible, remote, meaningful part-time working. And this is not just a fix for the mummies, all right? There's some fantastic stats that say, yes, of course, 91% of women in the workforce want that flexible working. 86% of men do. All right? Millennials want that. So this is a win-win. And so companies that are not really embracing that flexible, meaningful part-time working, job shares as a default, you're missing out on a huge opportunity in that respect. Now,
hey, Debbie, can I maybe just to build on that? I don't think it's just a win for the employees, though. You know, when I was a young manager, I had one of the positions was a job share. And I thought it was so great, we ended up creating 3 more. So 50% of my staff were job shares. As the manager, this was fantastic. You had to work on making sure there was a proper handover, but it wasn't just good for the employees, it was also good for the employer.
Fantastic. Agreed. Absolutely. So it's that really rethinking how we define work, how we define job roles to really open doors. And again, that goes into full-on inclusion. Now, one thing I want to ask, for the second year running, we have found that the vast majority of our companies outsource some or all of their IT services. And very few of them had data on that. So this is a huge problem for us to look at. Are any of you starting to tackle what's happening? Now, I think nationwide you're starting to bring it in.
Yeah.
George, you're telling me something different. So do you want to finish that out for me about the outsourcing question?
Yeah, so in looking at investing in the organisation for our members and the level of investment for our tech strategy to build a sustainable business model, we took the decision that rather than outsourcing or using third party for much of our IT operations, we would actually bring that capability in-house. And that has meant, as I've alluded to, the realisation that we need many hundreds of new employees within technology. It also affords us a fantastic opportunity to really work on the inclusive culture and also increase diversity. But back to something that you alluded to earlier, we can bring in many, many new people, but unless we have an inclusive culture, they will very quickly leave the organisation. So we are in a place of inclusion first, and we are looking at building the capability utilising our current colleagues, so retraining and reskilling, which
And
is
that's
fantastic.
huge. And we're going to return to that at the end. But I think, again, we're seeing game changing
Yep.
for companies that are thinking about career conversion, upskilling, retraining
Yep.
existing workforce
Yep.
to turn them into their tech workforce.
And so therefore the plan is absolutely about bringing in capability, but it is about balancing that with affording internal colleagues the opportunity to retrain and reskill.
Fantastic. Okay, so Nationwide's solution was to bring it in-house. George, talk to me about how you're moving in terms of what's outsourced for your IT.
Well, so obviously we're an IT company, so IT is insourced, so it'd be part of our statistics. But building on what she was saying, one of the things you should think about is the network that you have. And I gave an example of working with a small partner, but at a global level, we're requiring our legal and marketing and communications firms, which is where a big chunk of our external spend goes, to actually track and have plans to improve diversity and inclusion. And I'm a big believer in the Peter Drucker quote, what gets measured gets done. And it's amazing when you go to these partners and you say, look, we'd like you to at least understand where you are and then help put together plans to improve it. We believe it will be good for you and good for us.
Fantastic.
That you see improvements. So very much like what Nationwide did, we're doing something similar, but just from a different vein.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for those of you who still have people outside, it's about setting those targets, getting them to measure, asking those challenging questions, bringing it in-house, doing those sorts of things. Now, as we wind it up, I need for all of you to think for a moment about what is, if I'm sitting in the audience, I've got to go back into the office, what's one thing that absolutely you must try to do to change the game this year for 2020? George, you want to kick off and we'll go through?
Sure. I'd say, look, think of it like a business opportunity or problem. Have a plan. Be intentional, let people know you're going to do it. Set objectives, make sure they're numeric. Have 2 or 3 concrete actions you take and then measure it. It's no different than that. That's the biggest thing we learned, is once we were intentional and we actually put a set of strategies and a set of metrics behind, that's when we got momentum behind it.
So it's not a bolt-on, it's boil it in from the start, from a strategic level onwards. Ross, what would you say is the thing we should get out and do?
I think it's really important to understand that there's no one thread to pull on this.
Good.
You need to go back into the office. You need to look at the culture of the leadership. Ultimately, this has to start from the top. Everybody needs to buy in at the leadership level. So go back, look at your leaders. Are they really understanding the benefits of diversity and the opportunities that it brings? Or are they really just looking at it from a policy perspective?
Good.
And if they aren't, start to challenge that perception and really think about how you can do that.
It's taking everyone with you. And I think in big companies, yes, absolutely, we have to have C-level buy-in. But if we don't have it at those middle managers, if we don't have it all the way through, it's just a piece of paper, it's just the posters on the wall, it doesn't change anything. What would you say?
I think for us, the first comment I would make, and I talked about this earlier on, I think the unconscious bias approach, there was a sense early on of fixing people. And actually, it's not about fixing people, it is fixing the system.
Good.
And that's I think, where we are at Nationwide. It's the forensic approach, it's anything and everything, look at it, and look at ways of improving it. So fix the system.
Fantastic.
Not the people.
Hema, finish it up for us. What do we need to go back in and do?
I think we've got to not take no as an answer.
Good.
Right? There's just not, it's 2020. There is no excuse for not embracing inclusion in this day and age. And I think when organisations go, oh, but it costs too much, or it's a little bit difficult, we don't have time, make time. Right? I've got colleagues in the audience who do 2 or 3 jobs at the same time in senior positions, right? You can make time to do this. Absolutely no excuse not to embrace inclusion in 2020.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to my first panel. Can we give them a round of applause? Right. While we're doing a changeover, in the old days, we let you talk around a table. We can't do that. So you have people sitting to the right of you, to the left of you, in front of you, behind you. As I change my panel over, can you talk about what is the one thing your company is trying to do in the past year that's been making a difference? Quick change while my second panel comes up.
many times. And
You
it's
know
sort
what?
of like,
I must have read it 100 times, and sometimes it's just like it just goes out of your head. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, what did I write
don't look at
about?
my notes or I'll forget anything. Just wing it. So save me if I'm...
That's all right. I've already said to Debbie, give me a note to jump in on anything.
That'll be a no then.
I want to do So, that's where we've been in the last year. But if you remember, back in September, oh, how you loved us when we were stalking you for that data. But we got that data and we analyzed it. This is the second time we've been able to run the report, and it's been exciting. We'll talk about the process that we did that, but if you've not been there before and not seen it before, we'll encourage you at the end of the event to go on and to download our full toolkit. And when we talk about the Tech Talent Charter Toolkit, we're talking about three things: the report, the open playbook of diversity, best practice, and we're also talking about our directory, finding those other initiatives, programs that you can work with. So here's some people who've been working with us on this. Same assignment. This is the toughest question. Who are you? Why are you here? Lexi, will you kick us off?
Hi, my name's Lexi Papaspiru, and I'm the project lead for the Tech Talent Charter report.
Hello, I'm Elaine Quinn. I work for Nominee, and we have been founding partners of Tech Talent Charter and sponsors of the report this year.
I'm George Windsor, Head of Insights at Tech Nation. We've been working with the Tech Talent Charter on the report. I think for me, the reason why I'm here is in the first instance, we need to understand what's going on in order to understand what practices we can put in place to really make a difference. So really welcome the research and really glad to be part of it.
Fantastic.
I'm Danielle Lyons. I'm the Customer Engagement Manager for Spinks, and we hire tech talent for tech startups, scale-ups, and fast-growth tech companies across the UK. We feel, as a tech recruiter, that diversity of thought is crucial to the ongoing success of the tech industry, and we want to be part of that solution and not part of the problem.
And we're quite excited because Spinks is now sponsoring our open playbook for the first time, which is exciting too. So what you won't know behind the scenes, as well as giving us the data, remember our obsession, we connect the dots, we connect the dots. So in analyzing that data this year, we didn't just do this ourselves. We had people from Tech UK who were in helping us with the analysis, the writing of the report. We had the Lloyds Banking Group give us their digital insights team. We had a day of data scientists crunching numbers and playing with numbers. We had Tech Nation throwing open their books, bringing in other richer data that we're putting that through. So it's been really exciting, and it's given us a much richer picture of the data, and that will continue to grow year on year. Lexi, what were the key things that emerged from the report from our perspective?
So I think, as expected, really, what we saw is that there are certain features of companies that are correlated with better diversity. And we mentioned on the first panel that size is a really big indicator. Well, it's not a really big indicator, but it's correlated with companies having better diversity. I think it's something like 42% for companies up to 9 employees. We also saw that the discipline that someone works in those disciplines can be more or less diverse. So whilst we saw user-centered design was very strong last year and continued to be strong this year, as was data, we found that quality assurance and testing was a real outlier at 48% women occupying those roles. So that was something that we didn't necessarily expect to see, but were really interested to find. And then we did a little bit more sort of questioning around, well, what's led to this? And that led to some really interesting questions around technology careers by design or by accident. And then that, in turn, leads to more questions about, well, if this can happen by accident, then how do we then improve how we make this happen by design?
It was quite exciting, wasn't it, for companies to unpack this and say, if we can make it work for quality assurance, how could we make this work for cyber? How could we make this work for data science? Any other findings that came out that were quite interesting?
Yes, we also found that in addition to these features of companies or role types and industries, there are also certain very granular processes that are correlated with better diversity, and they're things like having targets for the number of women on shortlists. That was one that stood out, as well as having a diversity and inclusion strategy. And they might sound like really obvious things, particularly to people in this room who are already bought into this, but there are many signatories that don't necessarily have these in place, and then wider in the industry, they're not particularly widespread practices, and yet we found that there's a correlation between those types of things as well.
And then the returners and retraining program had a positive correlation as well.
Yep, it's something like 75% of companies that have either a retraining or a returners program are above average for diversity when it comes to gender.
And this is really exciting. You know, I've got to say, I get the early drafts of everything, and I always skip to the end. I like reading the last page to find these things out. And what was really exciting was to see the data bearing out what we'd been saying all along, all right? I'd been gutted and had to find a way of telling it otherwise. But listen, it absolutely said in what you heard in the first panel, positive correlations on having that policy, that D&I policy, and the strategy, not just the piece of paper, the strategy going through. Really excited. We've talked a long time about setting targets around those diverse shortlists. The companies that do it are moving ahead. We see that almost 50% of you are thinking about doing it. If you aren't, you should think about it. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but setting those targets on diverse shortlists is essential. And then the real game changer, guys, if you haven't already, returners and retraining programs. Those that do it are getting ahead. Those that do it are really pushing ahead in those things. So if you haven't got that, you need to think of a way of doing that. We'll talk in this panel and the next one. All right, so thinking about it, Elaine, when we talk about Nominee, it's not one of our big multinational companies, isn't it? So in reading that report and hearing those findings, you'll really face some of those challenges. We saw the tiny companies are doing really, really well. The big companies are well. It's that pressured middle that we're seeing. Talk to me, because you did set some targets in Nominee. How are things going, and how does this report resonate with what you're seeing from your perspective?
Well, I guess as a company that's probably about 200 people strong, we're right in that sort of that squeezed middle that the report indicates. Actually, I was a little bit surprised that those companies aren't doing proportionately better, just given that we've got a little bit more of the infrastructure and the bandwidth to tackle some of these issues properly as we sort of grow up.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things, to echo the first panel, is just what gets measured gets done.
Absolutely.
So the idea that we're tracking shortlists for tech roles, what percentage of interviews include a female or other kind of target candidates, and then what happens to them, how many of them get the role. I was struck in the report by the theory that you need at least 2 women on the shortlist, and that's great and we aspire to that. That's really, really difficult for us to do at the moment. It's a real fight for talent, which actually helps the wider cause, because you have to look at absolutely everybody that could potentially add something new to your business. But often we find that when we have great roles that lots of people could apply for, often it's a male-only list of applicants. Yeah. So we've had to take wider steps to show that we're open for business for everybody. We've got a blog on our website, and we continually feature a variety of people across the business with different backgrounds, really interesting career paths, just to show that we're the sorts of company that you should consider. If you're at all on your radar, someone like you will be working for Nominee somewhere. So we tried to kind of bring that to the fore.
And it's sort of echoing what we heard before in the first panel. You know, Hema's we don't accept no. We've got to do this, even if it's really hard. And then by setting these really ambitious targets, it drives behavior, doesn't it? So it's not a magic bullet. If I set a target, they will come. But that tough target made you rethink all sorts of processes and other things going on. And, I mean, George, are you seeing this as Tech Nation? You've got that look across the ecosystem. How is what we're talking about so far resonating about where we are and where we need to be for the 20s?
So it very much resonates with the research that we've previously conducted in Insights at Tech Nation, but also with the companies that we've worked with. So as an organization, we exist to support ambitious tech entrepreneurs. We worked with about 650 companies last year through growth programs, but also through networks. And really, as part of those growth programs, we're saying to companies, you need to be thinking hard about inclusivity and diversity in your businesses. I guess I've got sort of 2 key points. The first one that struck me was 65% of companies in the survey had a diversity and inclusion strategy, and 25% were planning to do that for 2020. And I guess despite the grim outlook today, 2020 is going to be a great year, I think, for really getting that embedded within companies in tech. The companies that we work with, they do really prioritize inclusion and getting the right talent into their business because they're working in an incredibly competitive global industry. And really that's something that resonates right across the board from companies at the very early stage where they have quite a low number of employees, usually under 10, through to companies like Monzo that we're working with that have up to 1,000 employees.
Absolutely.
The second point I'd say is, based on some research that we conducted previously, we found that 77% of directors in tech companies, right across the board, from small to large, across different sectors, are male. And it's not just about male-female, of course, but we're thinking about this, I guess, as a proxy for diversity and inclusion within senior leaders and directors within businesses. And I think it does need to come from senior leaders as well as being pushed from the bottom up.
Absolutely.
It's been mentioned a few times before. There's no cookie-cutter solution to this. There's no one-size-fits-all. But I think what we can say is that it needs to be pervasive. And what is really critical is making sure that we have senior leaders and board members and directors bought in and representing diversity and inclusion in the business.
Super. Now, Danya, at Spinks, you're really changing the game on how recruitment's done. And you must have clients who come to you with these terrible targets and says, bring me the women, bring me the women, bring me the women. How does this link in why you're doing the open playbook? What's the key from Spinks' perspective on how we're doing the playbook and why it's important?
So Spinks joined this conversation around diversity and inclusion around 10 years ago. And it started really when people started coming to us and saying, you know, we want more women. That's where it started. And we could help around kind of attracting more talent that would help them hit their targets. However, if a business then doesn't then have the inclusive cultures internally to onboard these people or retain that talent, then it's almost dead in the water at that point. So it became really crucial to us to be part of this solution and start working towards supporting our clients with creating D&I strategies that really cover all aspects of an employee lifecycle. Our expertise is focused around the talent attraction, you know, building inclusive employer brands, scaling at pace without compromising on quality. But at the same time, we kind of stop at the onboarding stage. So the advice past onboarding is where we have to kind of hand off, I guess. The open playbook for us is a game-changing resource for tech businesses in the UK to help them devise, create, and measure evidence-based D&I strategies that work.
Fantastic. And I think, you know, to think about, a year ago, we were talking about this open playbook. An open playbook sounded much sexier than it was because it was a giant Google Doc with lots of tabs, but hundreds of actions and strategies and interventions that companies could begin to do, as you say, through the whole cycle, because it's great to get better at recruitment, but if we can't retain them, if we can't grow them, if we can't get them to that next level, we're just creating a leaky pipeline. So we began, and you know, working with Spinks and some hack days, we started going through, and we're beginning to curate that. So hopefully from today, you'll be able to start looking on the first phase. We took those top-level strategies and interventions for each thing, recruitment, retention, growth, retraining, and began giving you examples and resources. We're not the answer for everything, Tech Talent Charter. You give us the answers. So if you are these companies who are in that hard-pressed middle, if you're a corporate that's wanting to look at that small point of view and think about how can we start doing something in a small way and expand it through, something like the playbook is a way of doing that. Now, I mean, from looking at the report, looking at the playbook, are there things from any of your perspectives that are most interesting and that you'd be thinking of digging into in the coming year?
So for us, we've created a platform called You Equal Tech, which is a community of 4,000 plus people. We hold meetups on site with our tech clients to help them showcase their employer brand, but also give a platform to diverse speakers. There's an incredible idea that you can't be what you can't see, and this gives access to people that maybe wouldn't normally have the opportunity to speak about their career, to talk to technology professionals or people that want to get into tech but don't feel like they belong, and help them see that there is a path and a route into our industry.
Super. And we saw that, didn't we, Lexi, in terms of when we look at the strategies that our companies said were game-changing, getting out and being part of communities, meetups, those sorts of programs make a difference. The days where if we build it, they will come are gone. If we want to find it, we get out of our office, we get out of our comfort zone to go where people are. Are there other things that are leaping out that you think that were interesting from the report or from the playbook that your company or companies you work with are grappling with?
So from my perspective, I think there are three things. The first is very similar. We're looking to better understand what exists in communities in tech out there, not just in companies. So looking at the hidden underwiring of the tech ecosystem.
Fabulous.
To really try to help companies tap into that ecosystem. I think it's incredibly important that opportunities to engage with companies aren't isolated to employment opportunities. And we need to make sure that people are aware of opportunities that exist within companies across the board. The second thing I'd say is, from a research perspective, we're thinking far more about, I guess, individual roles, functions, occupations within businesses, and trying to evaluate the extent to which companies are, again, offering inclusive opportunities across these different functions and areas of activity. And I think the research, again, does that incredibly well, looking at it across different sectors.
And I'd say that was a really interesting, wasn't it? When we started digging into that piece on looking at the quality assurance role, and if you see, we didn't just do the research at the top level of the stats, we went back and then asked some of the women who had gone into these roles. And I'd really urge you to look at that section of the report, because there's some interesting insights that you could begin to unpack to really build out in other roles in your company. And then ecosystems is absolutely huge. In the next panel, we'll be talking about something we're kicking off in Leeds, because absolutely we have to do things at a national level. But we have to, where the real impact comes is at that local and that regional level. So this is lovely, and I love having you here. But the real engine house of what we do is at those events in Leeds, in Gateshead, up in Manchester, etc. And we'll talk in a few moments about something that we're kicking off in Leeds. And in 3 weeks' time, do have a look. We're having our first London regional event. Remember, I promised from our first year that we'd get outside the London bubble. Well, I've heard from some of our Londoners, hey, where's our regional event? So we will be doing an event on the 7th of February in partnership with the Mayor's Office to try and kick that off in the London way as well. Okay, so I think in feeding that out, Lexi, can you just finish with us? When we looked at the report, and we actually, we asked more from our members this year about what makes the difference, what does the change. What did we find?
We found that the sort of solutions or interventions that our signatories were saying were most frequently successful were actually clustered around one central topic, which is to do with training and education. Yeah. And I think that intersects really in an interesting way with another sort of piece of information we surfaced in the report, which is that senior business leaders, and echoed on this panel and the previous one, are finding that the biggest obstacle for gender diversity in their businesses is just a shortage of talent. And I think it's a difficult one, because you want to press your supply chain to do really well for you in finding these individuals, but there is just a blatant numbers game to play as well, which is really challenging. And so looking at things where you can actually change the shape of the funnel partway through, so giving women who have had different careers or different skill sets the opportunity to reskill and upskill and actually add to the funnel without having to necessarily focus everything at school leavers, for example, that's a really interesting way of changing what this situation and this landscape looks like in quite an immediate way for what is essentially a systemic and long-term problem.
It's those alternate routes in that are really, really worth exploring. Okay, so I'm not going to make you throw out the same target to everyone else, because you've just already given them some of a shopping list. So you're going to give the audience one thing that they could go, or you can be cunning like George and break your one thing into a few parts. But what's the one thing that people could do in this room to make something different for our roaring 20s?
I would say be open-minded. You need talent. You want the best talent, and everybody in the organisation has just to be more open-minded about where that person comes from, what their background is, what experience they've got. That, I think, will make the difference.
Abandon those preconceived notions. And I also would say, again, do accept if you're trying something innovative and different and with an underrepresented group, it might not work. And what I hate hearing is sometimes those companies, oh, we're never going to do that again. You know, that women's program, it just didn't work. I know that I've hired some people who are left-handers that didn't work, but I didn't wake up and say, you know what, I am never hiring another left-handed person again. Understand when we do something different, it's not always going to be perfect, is it?
left-hander.
Exactly, and that is exactly my point. They're out there. What would you say, George, is the one takeaway?
For me, it's companies take the blinkers off. It's important to understand what's happening within your organization, but it's critically important to understand what's happening across the ecosystem. And there are hugely talented people out there. Tap into them. Make sure they're aware of you as much as you're aware of them.
And that's going to be crucial in our directory, to think outside your company walls. You've got to get outside just your little bubble to really make a difference in this. Last but not least?
Assess your suppliers and make sure you're aligning yourself with businesses that share your values around diversity and inclusion, and that's quite imperative, especially if they're representing you to the world of talent. What more are they doing? What communities are they tapping into on your behalf, and how are they representing you? And lastly, be authentic, be yourselves. People want to see a true picture of an employer before they take a role, and that's really key, I think, for moving the dial.
Fantastic. So that echoing again, don't take no for an answer. Get out there, ask your suppliers, your partners to get it right with you. Can I have a round of applause for my panel? Okay, it's chatting time. So from this, what are your priorities for 2020? You've got a few minutes, but I'm going to bring you back. You were quite chatty last time. I like that, but this is a short chatty moment. Please chat while my next panel comes up.
Take a picture of the group.
I know. It's good.
My panel are old hands at these sorts of things. Jacqueline, in 1 minute, please can you tell us who you are and why you're here?
So, morning. My name's Jacqueline de Rojas, and I'm the president of Tech UK. I am a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion in technology specifically, and I find myself at a critical point where if we care about the fact that algorithms are now deciding whether you get a place at university, that job interview, or that mortgage, I think it's really important that we also care who's writing those algorithms. And so it's not just a noble cause that diversity matters, but it's also business reasons. And if we want to include everybody and not leave anyone behind, diversity really matters now.
Super. And Russ.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, everyone. My name is Russ. I'm the founder of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates. And the reason why I'm here is that we in the UK are building a world-leading tech nation. If you look at the headlines this morning, over £13 billion was invested into the tech sector in 2019. I often say that we're becoming the third home for tech after the US and after China. However, a sector that is 80% white men is not sustainable. And I am frankly angry that the numbers have not shifted over the past few years. Organizations like the Tech Talent Charter are doing phenomenal work. We're talking about great initiatives, great tactical recommendations that we can deploy, but let's keep an eye on the bigger picture. If we don't fix this problem, we will see a train wreck in the coming years ahead.
Absolutely. Jen.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Standish from Sky in Leeds, and I look after the Software Engineering Academy at Sky in Leeds. So I'm responsible for our technology training programs from early careers, so our graduate and apprenticeship programs, and also look after our Get Into Tech program in Leeds, which is a retraining program for women that have little to no coding experience. We provide them with training whereby at the end of that they're in a position to apply for junior developer or tester roles. And we are also in the process of launching a technology returners program in Leeds as well.
To be discussed in a moment. And last but not least.
Hi there, I'm Jill Wiley. I work for Lloyds Banking Group, so I'm a tech leader there. I've been in tech all my life. Why am I here today? Well, actually, why am I even at Lloyds Banking Group if I'm a technologist? So I'm really passionate about using technology to help customers, and the bank is really passionate about that. So we've got a real value system that's very closely aligned. But even more importantly, I've been very passionate about creating a very inclusive environment in my area where I work, probably since I became enlightened about 10, 15 years ago, that it actually drives much better results. So I deliberately create that environment, and we have a real responsibility within Lloyds Banking Group to do that as well. So we're a really big player in the UK, and in our tech department, amazingly, we have around 18,000 people. So I feel like that as well because of the size and scale. So if you imagine being one of the executives leading that community, we have the most phenomenal ability to create a difference. And I think at one level with, I'm sure you're all aware of the targets and commitments we've made as a bank that are really making a difference with females in senior positions. So our target of 40% by the end of this year, we're well on track for that, and we've done some amazing things with some of our very senior leaders. So we actually have a very strong target-orientated but actually belief system that this is the right thing to do. That is why I'm at the bank as a technologist.
Fantastic. And each of you in your own right have been really deep supporters of what we're trying to do with the Tech Talent Charter. And in particular, and why I have you on this panel, is two strands that we really want to dig into. The first one is this retraining and returning push, all right? And we're going to talk some about why does that matter for companies. Then more importantly, what can you do? How can we create some collaboration between the big companies that have the bandwidth to do it and the smaller companies who can't, all right? You don't have the size and scope. And then even more importantly, and touching what you said, Russ, how do we get outside, move down from the national to the reality of what's on the ground? So let's kick off first quickly. Why are we doing retraining and returners? What's the opportunity? What are we seeing on the ground where it makes a difference? Any of you can jump in.
So can I go first?
Yeah.
I love the fact that we have so many companies signed up to the Tech Talent Charter. But what's really interesting is less than half, so 49% of signatories of the Charter do not have retraining or returner programs. Just saying.
And this we want to change, and I'm throwing that down in this point, because by the end of today, if you walk out of here not thinking you need to find a way in, you need to rethink that. I mean, Jen, Sky's been doing this for a while, and it was really interesting for us. So when Sinead mentioned earlier, we will be, in the spring, launching a campaign that's going out to working age women to consider getting into tech through alternate routes. And we asked, just through our membership, if you know any women who have taken an alternate route in, let us know. Sinead and I thought we'd be shortlisting about 100 women. 350 women sent us their stories. And these were stories of people who were ex-military, people who are returning from a career break, people who'd really missed the boat from education and were in dead-end jobs. All of these routes in. I've got to say, a lot of great candidates had come through some of the Sky programs. Why has Sky gone so deep in this respect?
Yeah, so we're in about our 5th year now of running our Get Into Tech program. I think if you want to recruit more females into the organisation, particularly into those very technical roles, you have to think about doing something a little bit outside of the box than just kind of going out to the market. So we're looking at women who perhaps didn't choose STEM subjects at school or university and kind of don't see technology as an option, but are actually really, really passionate about it and have all of those kind of great skills, logical mindsets. And so we give them the opportunity to actually learn to code from scratch, and then we're kind of growing our own talent. We bring them in at the end of the program, give them the opportunity to apply to Sky as a junior developer, and they come in at that kind of associate graduate level, which has really helped us see a rise in female applicants.
And at Lloyd's, you're investing a lot in the sort of upskilling of people as well.
Yeah, it's huge because I was interested in our speaker from RBS earlier, Nationwide, who's Chief Product Owner. So clearly experimental mindset, which I think plays well to a new way of working, and really plays well to a very inclusive way of working. So we've been upskilling an awful lot of people into being product owners, CPOs, or feature team-led product owners, to being Scrum Masters, to being coders as well. So we've got our code clubs, but we have a huge upskilling program. And actually, that was a really strong commitment. We had to do that because we wanted to take our workforce that was very traditional from a project-orientated perspective and move them into an agile methodology or agile techniques, agile mindset. And the exciting bit for me in that is when you do that, you're actually creating a much more inclusive environment. And I don't think it's spoken about out loud. I think it actually naturally happens because you get every voice is heard. Your Scrum Masters are helping everyone get their points of view over, so you don't get domination in the room. You actually get the voices heard, and I think it's really key.
Fantastic. And there's also, as well as the retraining piece, there's a returners programs going on, because we do know we've had quite a leaky pipeline of people who have come in and dropped out, quite often because of lack of flexible working. I'll bang that drum again. So just to say what we're doing, and then I'm going to go back to you, Jen. We had an event back in June in Leeds, all right? Very similar working group where we had companies from across the Leeds area, we had training providers, we had recruiters, and we had Leeds City Council in the room. What was great at the end, as well as sharing best practice, this was already very connected as a city, and there was an energy to do something different. So what we have kicked off in partnership with the Leeds City Council is we are going to pilot the first ecosystem. So what we have is big employers like Sky, Accenture, Lloyd's, who are in the room and who are going to be willing to do more than they need in terms of retraining. There's a commitment in the room that once we map it, everyone who is part of that ecosystem, if I'm a woman and I apply to an Accenture program and there's not a place for me on that program, they'll signpost the Sky. Sky will be signposting what's happening in North Coders. And what we're hearing is big companies, Sky is willing to say, we'll train more than we need, and smaller companies can appoint from that piece, all right? Now, Jen, that feels initially radical and crazy. Why is Sky doing that, training more than they need in the Leeds area?
Yeah, so we've been, with Getting to Tech, we trained 16 women. As I say, they are coming out at that kind of junior position. We will take a handful of those women, but won't necessarily be able to support all 16 junior women at that time. But it makes sense that, that's the number that we can train. They all go through the same kind of training together. It makes sense that we want to offer them an opportunity at the end of it, if it's not with Sky, working with other organisations. It may be that they do go to another organisation for 2 years and then actually they come back to Sky in a more senior position. People do move on, so it just makes sense that we are working together and collaborating and sharing best practice and not kind of turning it into a competition.
And I think I remember Renee saying as well, we're putting a really friendly Sky person into one of our companies that is a client. So it's about understanding the benefits of ecosystem in that way. So to all of you, what we would say, a lot of times it is frustrating if you're a medium or small sized company to come to events like this. It's hard to show up at things and say, I don't have a D&I department, I can't set up my own academy. What can big companies be doing to move this dial forward for everyone in this ecosystem sense? Any comments from any of you?
Well, I think the thing that I say to many of the startups and scale-ups that I'm working with, many of them come to me and say, look, my biggest issue, I have so many vacancies. You know, if you look at the numbers across London, Greater London, we have 48,000 tech vacancies. If you listen to what Jacqueline quoted from the numbers today, you know, half of companies don't have a returners program. They don't have retraining programs. So I think large organizations can help the smaller and medium-sized organizations on the things that we're talking about here just now. But on top of that, I think companies, even if they're smaller businesses, need to make that investment. The gap is enormous. You know, it doesn't take a lot. There's some great examples that we've been talking about across all three panels about what smaller and medium-sized businesses can do to address the tech vacancies and the lack of diversity and inclusivity in their organizations. It's not that hard.
Exactly, and it's that making the investment, taking the risk, and as we heard in the last panel, open your minds to what a great candidate looks and sounds like. Don't always wait for just the finished article.
If I could also add one other point. I mean, there are many great grassroots organizations represented here today, represented more broadly, who know how to do this, who will work with companies, both large and small, to help them in very practical ways. And I say to many of these businesses, look, do not recreate the wheel. You know, there are great organizations out there willing to help you for very little, if no cost at all, to start to change this within your organization. You just have to have the commitment and the determination to make it happen.
And it's getting outside your business walls, isn't it? It's getting outside the office. It's looking at things like our directory to find at a regional level what is happening down the road, round the corner from you to tap into. All right, let's throw it out. We're going into the roaring 20s, which is much easier. We never got a good name for the naughties, did we? So going into the roaring 20s, what do we need to see happen? If I'm going to be really ambitious, I'm setting my New Year's and my new decade's resolutions. When we look at this space broadly, what needs to happen, each of you? Can I get just a wish of what needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need to be doing is back into hitting that middle management layer, actually. I think we need to really target that. It's about a belief system, it's about inclusion. And if you were to have this room, which I actually think this room, by the way, since last year's really, the faces back at me, it's really much more diverse. So well done, Debbie, on who you invited or who wanted to come, actually. So it's that type of thing. It's we are in it together to help shift the UK in its tech.
Good. And I think I would echo that. If you've not picked it up before, certain things that are going to change, continue to evolve, that we promised we would do back in 2017. Number one, we said we would start with the lens of gender. And then from there, we built. What we've heard from you is, for most of you as companies, you're ready to get in fully. You're really on board. And you're about looking at those other lenses. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're looking at where there are organizations, initiatives, other charters to bring together on other areas of ethnicity, age, mental health, disability, all of those sorts of lenses. But as you're ready to go on the journey, we're ready to do that. And it's about that driving it through to the culture. It's why I'd ask all of us from here on, don't say diversity and inclusion, all right? That drives the wrong behavior. It's inclusion and diversity. The focus is on that inclusion. Jen, what else would you say needs to be happening?
I think if you're kind of sat here now and you're quite passionate about launching a returners program or a upskilling program within your organisation, there will be other people within your organisation that are also passionate about that and like-minded. So find those people, perhaps start a working group, whether that's within your organisation, particularly for smaller organisations or regional, and also collaborate with other organisations, but finding those people and working together, because you can't do it on your own. You need other people at various different levels that are going to support you, support the programme, and support the individuals once you actually bring them in as well.
Brilliant. Russ, throw me down some gauntlets.
Throwing down some gauntlets. For me, virtually every company I meet with has growth as their number one priority. And I think what we can do is say, look, a key way to get there is through inclusion and diversity. And that should be an integral part of the growth strategy. Why? We know that companies who are more diverse, more inclusive, build better products, build better services, and or more profitable. So you have a ready-made solution to your company CEO, your company board, if you can say, look, if growth is our top priority, inclusion and diversity needs to be an integral part of that. It's not rocket science.
Absolutely. And
so
take me home, Declan.
I would say if we are to grasp the opportunity to become a digital nation of significance, we absolutely need to embrace a number of things. One is lifelong learning.
Yes.
Hear, hear.
Really important that we retrain and relearn not just the diversity and inclusion candidates, but everybody,
Everyone.
if we are to keep pace with technology. I would also offer a hashtag not just London, because I think regionally we absolutely need inclusion in that geographic form as well. And I would also say perhaps that, you know, hashtag not just women is a little bit harsh since we haven't got as far as we need to go, but neurodiversity, inclusion in all its forms, including in meetings where it's not just the articulate that get heard, but it's also people who are, you know, the introverts that find their voices. As I said, it's critical in tech that diversity is super important in the way that we design technology so that the algorithms are inclusive.
And so remembering that and building on that, you all have your little homework in front of you that I'm going to make you write at some point. If you are working in not London and are interested to be working with us on that, if you are interested in finding out about what we can do in not London, if you are interested on those recruitment, the retraining, but lifelong learning, and there's some interesting bits in the report about the impact of education and training on the workforce. Thank you so much for all of you. Can I have a round of applause for my panel?
Great. Thank you. Well done.
Yeah.
Hello again. So, as you know, our goal is to join the dots and to help in inclusion and diversity across the board. That's industry, third sector, and government. And government have been integral to our success. The support of the GCMS and the team, you know, led by Avi, have been really critical to us kind of galvanizing. And we are really appreciative that today we have our next speaker. We really are grateful for their support. So I'd like to introduce the Secretary of State for the GCMS, Baroness Nikki Morgan of Coates. Thanks so much, Nikki.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Sinead, thank you for that kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm just sorry that the weather isn't better, so we haven't all got a view, but perhaps that's good in the sense that we're not going to have something to distract us from the important business of what you will be discussing. And I'm delighted to show my support for the Tech Talent Charter. The Charter is a fantastic initiative which is working hard to promote diversity in the tech workforce, and I'm very proud that my department has given it our backing. Thank you to all of you who have signed up, and if there's anybody in the room who has yet to do so, please make it one of your New Year's resolutions to get signing. Now, greater diversity is all about making sure the incredible benefits of technology are spread more widely and more fairly, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. We are in the early stages of a new year, as we heard, a new decade, the roaring 20s, and indeed a new government. And that makes this the perfect time to look ahead and to think about what we want to achieve over the coming years. Now, DCMS officially became the Department for Digital in 2017, and even in that short period, we have seen huge growth in our digital economy. Digital is touching more parts of our lives, providing new opportunities and new challenges to grapple with too. And in this period, we've also seen a tech sector that has gone from strength to strength. Just look at the stats that were published this morning. Last year, venture capital investment in UK tech reached a record high of £10.1 billion, up from from 3 billion, up 3 billion from 2018. The UK is producing twice as many unicorns, billion-dollar value digital companies as Germany, and 3 times as many as France. And the rate of growth of money pouring into our tech sector is now outstripping the US and China. So the power of digital is transforming our economy, our public services, how we learn, how we connect, the entertainment that we enjoy, and the communities that we live in. And this pace of change is only going to intensify in the future. And we're starting from a very strong foundation. Thanks to our country's world-beating innovators and entrepreneurs, many of whom are here this morning, and thanks also to the investment that the government has made. But as we look to the future, the question is, how do we ensure a thriving economy driven by world-leading technology that works to the benefit of all citizens? That is our vision as a government, and there are 5 key principles that I think will help us to get there, and I want to set out this morning. So the first principle is that we will be an unashamedly pro-technology government in all that we do, because we believe that harnessed properly, technology is an immense force for good. Digital innovation and enterprise is a major driver of opportunity, productivity, and creativity. And there are over 2 million people already working in digital tech jobs in the UK. These are high-quality, future-proof positions, and demand for these roles is growing at pace at almost 3 times the rate of the financial services sector. We have a tech landscape that combines some of the world's major players alongside thriving new startups and scale-ups. And these, in turn, boost our other competitive strengths, from the creative industries to professional services to advanced manufacturing. But we need to think about how we can sustain, intensify, and spread this growth. There is so much potential if we can help to support the development, application, and the adoption of our next generation digital technologies across all of our industries. And we are well placed to do so. We have 8 of Europe's top 20 universities right here in the UK, working closely with our cutting-edge tech businesses. There are, of course, broader social benefits too, because these technologies, if developed responsibly, are central to the future of our communities. They will help transform public services and the relationship between governments and citizens. And through the flourishing tech for good industry, they will help us to tackle some of the world's greatest challenges. So, for example, we're already seeing the use of AI to detect breast cancer more accurately, protect areas and predict them, those areas at risk of flooding, and to identify sites where modern slavery is taking place. So the opportunities here are vast. And as we expand our trading relations around the globe, I can assure you that we are passionate about the opportunities provided by digital tech, and that they will be at the heart of the government's trade policy in the years ahead. So our second principle will be to make sure that the benefits of technology are spread more widely and more fairly. One of the government's major priorities is to help transform communities who feel that they have not felt the benefits of the change we have seen in recent years. As the Prime Minister said outside Downing Street just last month, we need to unleash the potential of the whole country and deliver opportunity across our entire nation. And we can only truly view the digital revolution as a success if its positive forces, the jobs, the investment, the creative opportunities, are used to break down barriers rather than entrench them. And that means ensuring that all people and all businesses have the tools they need to adopt and benefit from digital technologies, the connectivity, the capability, and the confidence. And it means making sure our tech sector is an engine of social mobility with a focus on tech clusters outside our capital. I was just hearing the conversation there in the panel about needing to spread digital tech across the country. So last week I was in Manchester, a city which is becoming a true tech titan with a turnover of £3 billion. In 2018, there were over 160,000 new job openings in Manchester's digital tech sector. And it has as many tech unicorns as Barcelona and Madrid combined. I also visited the Digital Catapult here in London last week, and I saw firsthand how our thriving digital sector is benefiting other industries that rely on digital innovation all across the UK, including our creative industries, like Creative XR, a joint project between Digital Catapult and the Arts Council. And this gives arts organisations the support they need to prototype new storytelling techniques using emerging technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. So the benefits are clear, not just for an area's digital economy, but for their economy as a whole. But we need to make sure all areas of the country are able to access these benefits, and my department, DCMS, is well placed to support this mission. So first, of course, there's the physical infrastructure, like broadband. Digital connectivity is a motor of economic growth, productivity, and social inclusion. It makes areas more attractive to live in. It gives people the freedom to live and to work more flexibly. And it helps communities to develop thriving digital economies. Through embracing 5G and full fibre, we can deliver greater capacity, faster speeds, and more reliable networks. And we can streamline the way that we interact with public services and lay the foundations for the industries of the future. Now, we will soon be announcing the winning projects of our £30 million competition to spark a tech revolution in the countryside and help rural Britain seize the opportunities of 5G. And we're also aiming for nationwide deployment of full fibre and gigabit-capable broadband by 2025, and we will pass legislation to make rollout quicker and easier. This is a hugely ambitious challenge, and it will involve unprecedented changes to the UK's broadband market. And it requires all parts of government, industry, and the regulator to work together on this national mission. Now, physical infrastructure is a part of the picture. But if we are truly to spread the benefits of digital, we also need competitive digital markets, so that the companies with new services to offer can compete fairly, and so that consumers get better products and content, cheaper prices, and greater choice and transparency. So over the coming months, we will build on the important work of the Furman Review, the Cairncross Review, and the Competition and Markets Authority study to support this. Now, alongside this, and again, I just came in at the end of the panel and heard talk about this as well, quite rightly, we need a focus on digital skills, which are an incredible engine of social mobility. They are now as important to employability and participation in modern Britain as English and maths. Digital transformation is creating fulfilling and productive roles at all levels. So we need to make sure that people from all backgrounds have the skills they need to fill them and to build lasting careers. Not just in our tech sector, but in all parts of the economy that rely on digital skills. Now, this isn't just about school classrooms. As the pace of digital change intensifies, retraining opportunities, again something just picked up by the last panel, for adults to refresh their digital skills will become even more important. So this year, we're going to introduce an entitlement so that adults without basic digital skills will have the opportunity to undertake new digital qualifications free of charge. And we will invest an additional £3 billion over the course of this Parliament to support the creation of a National Skills Fund. This will be an important step towards ensuring every citizen has the right to retrain at any point during their lives. And if we get this right, not only will we have a more highly skilled economy, but also one that is more representative of the country we live in. Now, you don't need me to tell you why this diversity agenda is so important. You're here this morning showing your commitment. But whenever I speak to leaders in our tech sector, I always reinforce this important point. If we do not work to open the door to underrepresented groups in our tech sector, not only will we deny them life-changing opportunities, but will be robbed of the diversity of thought that we need to drive cutting-edge innovation and shape the technologies that can benefit the whole of our society. Now, your annual report, published today, shows some... the annual report, obviously, is really, really exciting. The mention of it, the dropping of the crockery. So your annual report, China-shattering though it is, published today, shows some brilliant success stories. But we all know there's more to do. Now, I was proud to serve as Minister for Women and Equalities for 2 years, and I was the first female chair of the House of Commons Treasury Select Committee, where I oversaw the publication of a landmark report on women in finance. So I know how hard it can be to drive the change that we want to see. But if we are committed to being a country where everyone has the chance to flourish, then diversity in our tech sector is an imperative. And so we must redouble our efforts to get underrepresented groups studying science in schools, taking on digital roles, and having seats at the table where big decisions are made. As digital technology matures, it is time to move away from the view of new technologies as a utopia. But we must also move away from making technology the scapegoat for all the problems in the world. We need to look towards a third approach in which technology is neither the cause nor solution to all ills, but a tool which we can harness as we choose, where users of technology are empowered to make choices over how it impacts their lives. Companies are responsible for the implications of their choices, and in which governments act where they need to promote good and protect from harm. And so our third principle for digital regulation will be to drive growth through pro-innovation regulation. When carefully designed and implemented, regulation drives growth and stimulates innovation and new ideas. It gives confidence and certainty to investors and innovators and builds trust amongst consumers. And this, in turn, increases demand for digital products and services. Now, our world-leading regulatory regimes have already made the UK a go-to place for science, research and innovation for decades. The OECD has given the UK its highest overall score for the quality of our regulatory practices, and more than 20 countries have adopted the sandbox schemes pioneered in the UK to foster the development of innovation. And our groundbreaking Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation is looking at complex emerging policy issues as diverse as facial recognition technology, deep fakes, and bias in algorithms. And I'm determined that we will build on this, because we have an incredible opportunity to lead the world in nimble, proportionate, and pro-innovation regulation, giving us a competitive advantage at this important time in our history. So we are developing a new strategic and joined-up approach for regulating and governing digital technologies, working with industry and across sectors so our regulators and our regulations are equipped for the digital age. As well as our groundbreaking work on online harms and digital competition, over the coming months, we will work to foster fair, transparent and ethical online advertising, so this market delivers the right outcomes for businesses and consumers. We will develop our national data strategy so we can fully and responsibly unlock the power of data for people and organisations across the UK. And we will set out our response to the Cairncross Review into the sustainability of high-quality journalism in the digital age. And critically, we will work to make sure our approach to digital governance and regulation is coherent and is able to adapt as technologies evolve. And rather simply tackling each new issue as it arises, we will make sure that we have the tools and the institutions so we can respond strategically to support the whole of our digital economy. So our fourth principle is making sure that our online spaces are places where anyone and everyone feels safe and secure. Now, I'm optimistic about the power of technology, but it can't be denied that its widespread adoption has brought new threats. If we cannot be confident that digital technologies are safe and secure, then we will lose the trust that is the lifeblood of any digital economy. And we will discourage the adoption of new technologies that are vital if we are to truly unleash Britain's potential. We can only keep the benefits of the digital economy, the opportunities for commerce, the fast flow of transactions and ideas, if we can improve trust and confidence in technology and tackle what erodes it. So that's what our groundbreaking work on online harms seeks to do. 79% of 12 to 15-year-olds have had at least one potentially harmful online experience in the past year. And while there has been good work done voluntarily by industry and others in this area, it has not gone far enough. We cannot allow our online spaces to become fertile ground for those who want to abuse and harass. So our Online Harms White Paper set out plans for a new statutory duty of care overseen by an independent regulator. Now, the security of our digital platforms is also essential. Nearly a third of businesses suffered a cyber breach or attack in the past 12 months. And businesses can only fully realise the benefits of being online when they and their customers are confident that their money and their data is secure. So good cybersecurity has to be at the heart of a modern digital economy. Through our national cybersecurity strategy, we are investing £1.9 billion to protect the nation online. But top-down action from the government can only reach so many and can only go so far. And as with all new developments, we must all learn to adapt as citizens, as businesses, as parents. And if we can help users learn how to use digital technologies in a secure and differentiate fact from fiction, then we can have a huge impact. And we can combat our democracy and our civil society. Now, part of the answer lies in promoting the sustainability of high-quality journalism and public services broadcasting. And this is a big priority for me and the department. We're also developing a media literacy strategy, which we will publish this summer as part of our programme of work on the Online Harms White Paper. And together with the National Cybersecurity Centre, we are developing citizens. So the fifth principle is our commitment to a free and open internet. The UK will continue to be a global champion of the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance, in which a variety of different actors. And it's thanks to this model that the internet has developed, expanded and brought so many benefits, reaching a shared understanding of what it means to be a digital citizen in a free and open society. The rights and the responsibilities will always be a difficult endeavour, but it is one that we must tackle. So we will capitalise on our internationally respected regulators, our standards and our expertise to influence this agenda. And we will strengthen our alliances with like-minded nations so that we maintain the values that we hold dear, and so we allow future generations to benefit from a free and open internet. In these crucial 5 years ahead for our country, I see these 5 areas and principles as being critically important if we are to achieve our vision. And these principles are what I want us to work towards together. And I want you to tell us if you think that we aren't practicing what we preach. Now, of course, these 5 areas are not standalone silos. They're all deeply interconnected. The infrastructure, the investment, the policy and regulatory environment, and the skills and security. We need each and every one of these if we are going to harness technology in a way that works for all of us. Governments and societies truly flourish in the digital age if they see digital policy as a coherent, horizontal whole, and who look at all parts of the equation, which is exactly how DCMS intends to approach this digital policy area. And if we hold firm to the 5 principles I've outlined, we can make sure that we are not just driving growth, but that we are driving innovative, transformative, inclusive and responsible growth, so we can heal divisions rather than exacerbate them, and make sure that the innumerable benefits of this digital revolution can be felt far and wide. That's the challenge ahead. I'm looking forward to working with you and the many others involved in the digital and tech sector to get this right. And I wish you a very successful 2020. Thank you.
Photo ops. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Okay, lots to digest on a very busy morning. I don't know about the rest of you, but I relaxed enough over Christmas that January has been a bit of a shock to the system. But we're now starting and we're now on our way. Thank you so much for coming across this morning. There's lots of places to be, lots of things to do, and you made time to come here, and I appreciate you doing that. And even more importantly, thank you for being part of the companies that are doing something, not just talking about it, but are moving to practical and to move to collaborative ways of forward. So remember, I'm a head teacher. You have in your desks, did you see me reverting to type there? If I have to have a few of you that were dropping the cups, etc., to stay after class, we'll talk later. So what I would say is this. We've had some fantastic announcements today, some wonderful advice. I need you to take a moment and think, when you get back to your office, as well as tweeting like crazy all the way home, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? What can I check back in with you by the end of February to say, how did it go? What are the actions that you're going to take? I need you to write that down. And if you really want to show the courage of your convictions, I want you to tweet it. I want you to share it with us. Leave it behind. Put your email on the back. Notice this is about connecting the dots. We've said it's what you're going to do, but it's who are you going to reach out to? You don't do this alone. This is about collaboration and working together. All right? So I'm bringing us to the end, but you know we got to do that photo op. All right? So what I need us to do is this. We're going to march us all down the stairs. No one's going to fall because that would be a bad thing. Okay? When you get down, my wonderful organizers are going to be handing out some social media signs and those sorts of things. You, of course, are going to be tweeting like crazy along the way, not on the stairs because no one's going to fall. We're then going to get down. Our photographer is going to take his life in his hands and lean over the edge to take our picture. We're all going to look up, smile, look bright, happy, perky, ready to go. And then I'm going to release you back into the wild. This is not the finishing line. It never was. This is the next phase of the race. This is great. Our numbers are growth, but we're not there yet. This is an opportunity for me to preach to the choir. But to my choir, can I please say, get out and convince the unwilling. Get out and get other people to join the group, to join this mission, because it's time. It's the roaring 20s. We're going to go out of here roaring because it's time to change the world. Thank you, everyone. Get yourself ready. Write your homework. Get down the stairs. Smile for your picture. Thank you very much.
Like we do